Call to order the Tuesday, May 10th regular meeting of the Edina Park Board. The first item on the agenda is welcoming our new Park Board member, Susan Jacobson. Very glad to have you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your interest on the Park Board?
To push the button?
Yep.
Oh, I don't have to push the button. Hi, I'm really happy to be here. My name is Sue Jacobson. I work full-time at General Mills as a chemical engineer and manage their intellectual property for the R&D division. I decided to become involved in Edina's city works because I just think it's really interesting, and I haven't really participated in anything like that before, so I'm really looking forward to meeting people and kind of engaging in the community.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thanks.
The second item on the agenda is the approval of the Tuesday, April 12th park boarding minutes.
Move approval.
Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Third item of business is new business. First, we have the Veterans Memorial Committee update. I believe the chairman, Mike, is it Gorgon, is here? Hi, Mike.
Thank you. Good evening. It's Mike Morgan. I reside at 6605 Kenny Place in Edina, and I am the chair of the Edina Veterans Memorial Project. And I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this evening and to give you an update on the activities of our committee in the last several months. I've got 6 items that I'd like to present as updates. One is that we have now firmly established, and are in agreement of the various elements of the memorial. That has been a topic of our agenda for several of the monthly meetings, and we now are agreed as a committee as to what those elements are, to include what we call a focal point, a symbolic focal point in this case. We had some debate on whether we wanted to have an artistic rendering of a human figure as traditionally constructed with memorials. And our committee decided after much discussion not to go that route, but indicate some consensus on what we call a symbolic focal point. And nothing has been finalized, and you'll see later on in my update the submission or the request for submission of an artist's rendering of symbolic symbols. And we're thinking about an eagle, perhaps in bronze, sitting on a granite base that may have a flag involved in it. But we haven't exactly defined that item of it, but we needed to narrow it down for the architectural firm to continue on their design plans. But we have totally established all the elements of the memorial that the architect needs for his plans. And then the actual selection of the architectural firm, it's Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson of Minneapolis, SEH, and after a lengthy process where we went out to about 15 architectural firms who had done this kind of design in the past, we ended up with about 9. We narrowed that down after a review of the materials that we submitted to them for response to 5 firms. And in January, we interviewed representatives of the 5 firms, and almost were in total agreement that SEH was the architectural firm for us. Along with that firm, we're dealing with the actual site selection within Utley Park. We've been working with the architectural firm since, let's say, January. They came to our last couple of meetings and discussed initial designs within the park, meaning the location of the memorial, not necessarily the details of the memorial, which is the next phase. But they've selected and presented to us 3 sites within Utley Park, and our committee is in the process of reviewing those, doing a hands-on walkthrough of Utley for second and third time for most of us on the committee, and in our May meeting next week we'll decide which of the 3 locations within the park will be our final selection point for the memorial, and then the architects will go ahead and start with a preliminary design plan for us based on the location within the park. We also have had the opportunity to meet with representatives of both the Edina Garden Council and the Edina Public Art Committee. We invited them to our April meeting. We solicited their assistance twofold. Obviously, the garden people, we would like to be involved in anything that the landscape architects do as far as gardening, type, flower arrangements, whatever, flower gardens that are in conjunction with the memorial or maybe part of the memorial, and they were very, very receptive to do that with us, in conjunction with us and the architects. And we also met with the Public Arts Committee, and we're heavily relying on them to find us at least a number of artists who design in the mediums that we want, whether it's a bronze eagle or a granite figure or support part of the symbolic focal point that we're deciding on. And then we've have formed, and it has been in working in the last couple of months, intensely in the last month, a subcommittee to develop a detailed fundraising plan. This has kind of been our timeline to go through the elements, to get an architect, to start some preliminary discussions on the design of the memorial itself, and then getting into our fundraising phase of our project. So that subcommittee is at work as we speak, and we hope to have a preliminary fundraising plan in our monthly meeting next week. And then the last thing I'd like to make you aware of is, because we asked the Public Art Committee for their assistance, and with the Park Board staff's assistance, they've gone out at our request to contact potential artists and request what we call a call for design sketches for a symbolic focal point. We gave them kind of a summary of what the committee had been thinking about without any final decision being made, and asked for their input. And we have obtained a $500 donation to the project from one of the Kiwanis clubs in Edina, and we're going to use that as a stipend, as a first down payment, so to speak, as an award for the artist that's selected as our artist. And we've set a deadline for those sketch submissions of June 1st. So in summary, we're pretty much on our timeline as we envision it with staff to have this thing completed and dedicated, hopefully by July 4th of 2012. And although it's a slow and steady process, we are making progress, and we're very happy with the committee. Individually, I think there are 11 dedicated individuals who are passionate about establishing a Veterans Memorial in Edina. Any questions that I may answer for the board tonight?
Thank you for all your work and for everyone who's been working so hard at the project.
Thank you. We appreciate your support and the City Council's support as we continue down the timeline of our project. Thank you for letting me appear this evening.
Thank you. We look forward to more updates in the future.
Pardon me?
We look forward to more updates in the future.
Thank you. I'd be more than happy at any time to come
Great.
before the board.
All right. On to the next item. The Minnesota Flying Disc Classic, and is Paul Thompson here to speak?
Hi. Thank you. Paul Thompson. Don't touch this. What did you say about this? I can bend it. 4244 Crocker. Director Caprios and Park Board members, thank you. I'm here tonight to thank you for supporting our U.S. overall championships last year. It was one of the most successful Frisbee tournaments that any of the members of our group, and I've been playing for 40 years, they had a wonderful time in Edina, and thanks to Ellen Jones and her family for their great support. It was truly a remarkable tournament. This year, that tournament has moved to Fort Collins, Colorado. When I was talking to Director Caprios, he said, now this will be how often? And I said, about every 10 years we'll have the big tournament. So when the tournament was over, everyone came to me, the local players, and said, where can we do the annual Minnesota, which we call the Minnesota Classic? Could we come back and do it at the same fields? Because they loved Highlands, Normandale, and then we played disc golf out at Bryant Lake, which is at Three Rivers. So I said I would come and talk to the park board and see if we could get your support. The event this year would be much smaller. It would be just people from the metro area. A few players come down from St. Cloud. And my vision, because not many people know about overall flying disc, that's 7 different events. It includes disc golf. We have demonstrations of ultimate frisbee and guts frisbee, but there are events that are rarely played. So I'm going to Edina schools, working in neighborhood groups and trying to invite families. So we're having a special division this year for beginners and intermediates to come learn the events and to be a part of growing awareness, because these games are fun. They're easy to play, and we're altering each of the events now to be even more friendly for new people to come to play. So we would invite all of you to come. And we're looking at Friday night, the 24th of June, to have a picnic down at Highlands Park and to have an accuracy event. And then all day Saturday, we would do self-caught flight, distance, and DDC, which is a doubles game. And this is the DDC disc. I brought a show and tell. So that would be Saturday. And then Sunday, we would play disc golf at Bryant Lake. Come into Normandale for one event called Discathon, which is a running, throwing event up and down the hills. Normandale Park is perfectly suited for it. And then we'd come back to Highlands for freestyle. So we would be using Highlands really for one evening from 6 to 9, the whole day Saturday, and then again Sunday afternoon. We're expecting, there's usually 15 to 25 of the regular disc players that would come, but I'm hoping that we can generate at least 50 people to come to this event with local participation. So what we're looking for is approval to run the event, to let us use the fields at no charge like last year, and to help in promotion of the event, but that's not essential. We'll be doing that through our own, through Cool Planet and the other sponsors. We'll be asking the Edina Community Foundation to be a sponsor again, and then some local businesses to help provide food, drink, and we would take care of all the recycling, the composting, like we did last year, because we're trying to run a no-waste event. So there would be no stress on the park, and it's not that many people. So I'm open for questions.
May I ask, what's guts frisbee?
Guts frisbee is one of the oldest forms of frisbee. You have 5 players, 12 yards in between. You throw it as hard as you can, and you try not to break your fingers, your nose, and you have to catch it with one hand. Usually, you block the speed of the disc, which is coming at 60 to 70 miles an hour, and then tip it, and people dive, and sometimes 4 or 5 people will touch one disc. So it's the oldest disc game, very macho and very competitive. So we just do it as a demonstration of where disc sports have evolved from.
Do you wear eye protection?
You can wear gloves. Some people can wear goggles. So there's no, yes, I haven't seen anyone with helmets, but that would be a good idea. Usually the younger set loves it. But the people, when I went to my first tournament at Houghton, Michigan in '75, that's how I was introduced to tournament frisbee, is playing guts.
John, I've got 2 questions. One is, I don't believe there's a policy, but I just want to verify to decide how and when we waive fees and whether or not we can actually do that, or that's the authority of the city council. And the second thing is there any rules or guidance on when the city of Edina is a sponsor, can be a sponsor of an event, and what the requirements are there? Thanks.
Okay, there is really no standing policy with regards to when we do and don't so-called sponsor a group. It's done on a case-by-case basis. What you would do as a park board would be to make a recommendation to the council on a case-by-case basis, like you did with this group last year for the national event that was held at Highlands and Normandale. I think what's before you tonight is, as far as the access to the facility, typically we handle that internally with staff. If we feel that it is not going to disrupt schedules from what would otherwise be in there, then we make a judgment call and contact the people for which it might displace. And if that's not an issue, then we go ahead with what would be otherwise a rental. But what I think is before you tonight is the request to waive the fee. Now, that's something that staff we just don't do that. That becomes a policy decision. And for you tonight, the decision, and is there a policy that guides you on when to say yes and no? No, there is not. You took the case by case last year and decided to give it at no charge. I will share with you that we do get multiple requests all year long to be a sponsor and waive the fees for a variety of very good causes, whether it be cancer or whatever the cause might be, to get free access to pathways or a shelter building or a field or golf course, whatever the facility or venue might be. But again, this I think what you're going to should question is, if you say yes to this group, which obviously wants to be an annual event now, who then would you say no to? They would want annual access to host this unique, non-traditional sport, but certainly a fun sport and certainly a wonderful sport.
And we're not asking for the park board to be a sponsor. We could list you as a host on the flyer if you want, like last year, Three Rivers and Edina were hosts, but we didn't ask for sponsorship.
Okay, I guess it's a terminology thing. You're asking for a waiver of the fee.
Yes.
I guess I see that as and that's fine. Mm-hmm. You're asking us to host, but to waive the fee. That's what's in front of you.
I think as a matter of goodwill, we waived the fee last year. And I do think if you're being requested by other groups, just out of respect to the declinations that you've given to the other groups, I think that this time we should not waive the fee. The fee is not that steep, unless you tell me otherwise, that I think it warrants waiving. I think we should not waive the fee this time.
One thing I'd like to clarify that was in our staff report that might be a bit misleading. It's $137 a day for general park area use. In this case, if they consume 3 athletic fields, we would count that as 3 field areas at $137 a day per field. If that's the case at Highlands, whatever the athletic field comparative would be at Normandale, if it's only 1 athletic field, then it would be $137 for the day. But at Highlands would likely be times 3 for the day. And they'd probably have to try to then go out and find sponsors to cover that fee.
So what I'm going to respond to is, first, it was a wonderful tournament last year, and I love the sport, and I would love to be able to support you with this, but under the circumstances, last year I didn't realize that there really is nothing in our policy that allows for waiving fees, that there's a resolution that is passed by the city council that sets fees, and nothing in there says anything about waiving a fee. And until we change our policy, I'm uncomfortable about every once in a while allowing someone free access unless I think that we need to either write it in our policy that occasionally we will look at the circumstance and waive the fee. But otherwise, we're acting against a fee that was voted on and passed by City Council.
John, do you have any idea of how much revenue we get in these types of fees just for fields absent like the soccer and baseball teams? And
Well, what this would do likely, the displacement, if that's your question, the loss of fee for displacement, really wouldn't be anything, I don't think. The participants pay the $9 per participant fee for the season, and they just wouldn't have access to the fields during that event. So arguably, there would be no loss. Now, having said that, you might want to look at it, well, if there was another group that would be willing to displace them, and they're willing to pay the fee, then you could look at it, yeah, you're turning away $137 a day per field. That's another way to look at it.
I guess just to play devil's advocate here, I think another way to look at it is, park and rec marketing. Hey, here's things you can do in our parks, whether it be, playing guts frisbee, and I'm going to take you up on that, Paul. I'm there. No, but whether it be frisbee or the more traditional sports, soccer. What other, I guess, do you have other marketing events? I mean, I know it's probably not that hard to market hockey or soccer or baseball, but to me, this, as a park and rec board or as a park and rec department, want to promote the use of the parks. Is this, and again, this isn't a definitive answer for me which way I lean here, but is this a marketing situation for, hey, let's get out as a community and try a different thing?
Well, I guess that becomes a little subjective. I guess I would answer that by saying there's a lot of things that could be in the park that would promote different uses. A lot of them come our way that want free access. And the answer I always tell them is, as staff, I'm not authorized to waive the fee. You have to go through a process. And this is the start of that process, is to the park board. I would say that we have quite a few non-traditional things. We have the disc golf, which is free. That's at Roslyn Park. There is no fee for that at this time. We do have the skateboard park that we entered into at the YMCA, and that was something you can all be very proud of, that we found a creative way to get that financed with tax dollars other than just our own, with Richfield, Bloomington, the YMCA, and that's run by the Y, and they cover the operating expenses and all the liability insurance for it. So I guess there's a lot of things we would love to promote to get more people in the parks. And having said that, not everyone in the neighborhood, believe it or not, appreciated having this event there at Highlands this last year. I had just a handful of calls at most. I didn't like that people were sitting on their private property eating lunch, small things like that. And none of them willing to give me their names. They just said, I don't know where these people come from, those kinds of comments. But I didn't like the parking, the disruption to their private property, that kind of thing. So it all goes with a little bit of cost to the neighborhood. That's something you should consider too.
Paul, can you talk a little bit more about the involvement of the Edina Community Foundation and how they're involved with this particular event?
Well, I haven't asked anyone for sponsorship yet until I got approval here. So this is like the first step. But my nonprofit, Cool Planet, that does neighborhood fun and action for our planet, we would be a main sponsor. We are a 501c3 through the Edina Community Foundation. Last year, Dick Crockett sponsored and made a contribution, to our fees. But last year it was a big tournament and quite a big budget. This year, we're not going to charge very much, and there won't be that many people. So this is not a huge event. But we will certainly ask the foundation, because they like doing stuff like this that are, I think, non-traditional and, engaging Edina families. So that's my interest, and that's why I'm going to schools and gym classes to, get the kids excited about learning skills and then coming down and playing. We have weekly play sessions down at Highlands too, just, ad hoc sessions where people come in and play just for fun. So it's getting to be our regular place of play.
And I want to, the intergenerational nature of the sport and the way that it's getting kids out into the parks, I think you should be commended for that work. And I would recommend, since I don't think that we have the authority to do this until we change policy, I would recommend that what we do as a group is decide whether or not we can support a waiving of a fee or a recommendation, and then we could have that sent to City Council or recommend either way and have you pursue. I mean, I just don't think that as it is, that's something that, till we change the policy, I'm uncomfortable doing.
You do have the authority to make whatever recommendation to practice and policy that the park board feels should be followed. So that, you do have that right. You don't have the authority to create policy, but you have the authority to recommend policy and recommend practice. And then, like we did last year, even though we didn't have a pre-written policy that tells you this is what you have to do, you have the authority to think outside the box and deal with cases like this on a case-by-case and make your recommendation that you think are in the best interests of the community for both today and in the future. And then the council will take it under consideration and make the final decision.
May I ask a question about the space? What would, like on Friday night, we would not necessarily have to use any of the soccer fields. We could do most of this work down to the south end of the field. And on Sunday, we wouldn't have to come back to Highland. We could just do everything at Normandale, and we're not using any of the fields at Normandale. We're just using the hill area. So I don't know if that has an impact on the charge.
Yeah, if it's just a general park area, again, it's $137 a day, or $45 an hour, whichever's less.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
But if you use multiple fields, it's times whatever those number of fields are.
And what's a
But if it's just a
field?
general park area, it's the same fee.
So at Highlands, if we use most of the field, that's how many fields?
I believe we have 3 fields there, Ed, is that right?
Yes, you're correct. Actually, having visited the site last year, I would have done the 137 times 4, the 3 fields plus the general park area.
I think I would have stuck you with just the field. But, I appreciate what you're saying. Yeah, it was very good use of the park. This is not to say anything negative. It was a wonderful event. I agree with everything Ellen said. But fee-wise, that's what's currently on the books, and the park board certainly has the opportunity to make whatever recommendation the council they feel is in the best interest of the community.
So what I'm hearing is that we're very supportive of this event, and we're so glad that it was successful and that people want to return. However, there is hesitation more in regards to our policy on the board, and I believe it ties into what we're considering in our fees committee. And I'm wondering if the committee members, when we establish the committee, can discuss this and decide. I think Todd brings up a great point. What is our role? Do we want to bring marketing? What is our service to the community? Asking all those questions. So my question right now to you and to John is, what is our timeline if the committee does decide, not saying that they will make a decision in time, but, what are we looking at?
Well, we have 6 weeks now till the event, so we'd like to start promoting the event and finding a location. So if this is going to be a long process, we'd probably look for another site. And I'd have to go back to our people and say, hey, can we raise our entry fee or go out and find sponsors to cover. So I'm trying to get a number for what we've described, and it sounds like it's 137 times 4 plus 137 plus 137. So that's about $800. So that would probably come back with a no from my group.
Just as another side, I'm just wondering how frequently are those, is that during this period of time, is that field normally booked? Is this high demand? Is it likely that somebody else is going to be renting that?
Renting it, probably no, but used by athletic associations, most definitely. It's ones that Ed has blocked off on the calendar to be sure that it's not booked for athletic play. Otherwise, it will be. If this event doesn't happen, then they will be out there using those fields.
Is there a middle ground here of partial payment or something like that? Did you ever do that?
Partial payments?
Discount?
Is that the question?
Discount, right, like half price or, you know.
Another question for you, Paul. Is this something you are asking of the park board tonight to be an annual event and annually waive the fee?
It would depend upon, you know, the response from the community, but I think that's a good possibility because I know that I am committed to doing these things. I live here. It's much nicer here than St. Cloud for me, so I would like to see this become an annual event, and I would like to engage the park board and the parks in more of an outreach campaign to teach them a cooperative. It's like not non-competitive, but it's very different from travel squads and big dollars and, you know, a lot of travel. So I think that this offers something that other sports don't. And the intergenerational piece that Ellen mentioned is very key. I mean, here I am, 62, and I'm a serious player. So we want to engage families in this activity. So those would be the selling points, to actually engage more people through a regular park board program where we would go into schools, parks, do workshops, and like that.
So John, if Paul made this into an association, he called it the Frisbee Association, what would the fee be for them to, it would be by player, right?
That's something that would have to be discussed by the park board to see if they would, if they were independently incorporated and followed all the guidelines of athletic associations, although being a non-traditional sport. You could vote them in as one of the priority access independently incorporated groups. Then they would pay likely the $9 per participant for the season, and we would then book them, and they would compete with sites with other associations if that's something the park board would like to do.
Is currently, is there an Ultimate Fit Frisbee League in Edina?
The Edina High School has multiple Ultimate Frisbee teams, and I believe they can letter. I don't want to muddy the water, but one of the things that we may want to talk about is the residency, because I thought our access to facility policy talked about not only did the reservation need to come from a resident, but I thought there was a minimum residency requirement, because I know I get multiple calls from youth and adult teams or programs, and I always fall back to that access to facility policy.
Yeah, no, that's correct, and that's what I was saying earlier. The park board would have to vote that in based on all the mandates that are currently in place. They have to provide, you know, their insurance. They'd have to be sure that 90% are residents, all of that. I think what's before you tonight is to think, what would you say to the next group that's in front of you, whether it be the Heart Association or the Cancer Foundation, whatever, who also has a good cause and maybe brings something unique that draws more people and more activity to the park. Why would you give one group waive the fee on an annual basis and not the next? I think that's part of the discussion.
An example that comes to mind is the Chowan Park, though it's not an athletic use, it is still a use of a park, and I would like to be consistent as a board, so I'm uncomfortable at this time making a decision, but I would very much enjoy working on this issue, and I don't know if other members would be willing to meet in a timely fashion to discuss it, since it is upcoming. Are there any other thoughts?
It sounds to me like we don't have support for this because we don't have guidance and policy to direct our decision-making. And on top of that, it sounds like we're creating the potential for receiving, many of these requests, and some may show up at Park Board or have the capacity to get here, some may not. And so I don't think we're in a position to approve this. It was great we could support the event last year, but it sounds like this is something that does not have support right now. It's possible we get policy written, but I think we're putting Paul in a bad spot if we stretch this thing out 2 or 3 weeks and then ultimately say no at that point. So I would move that to forward this to council, saying we don't support this request, and we request their cooperation in developing a policy around both elimination of fees and the requests and how we do that, and number 2, on what the guidelines are for sponsoring events within the city.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? And the motion passes. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to possibly working with you in the future, and thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Sorry, you couldn't help.
The next item on the agenda is the golf course consultant proposals on the Park Board Committee, and I am told that, Louise, are you giving us an update?
The committee met yesterday,
Oops.
Monday, May 9th, and present in attendance was Joe Holbert, Dan Peterson, Don Fronick, Todd Anderson, John Keprios, and myself. And we reviewed the 5 proposals that came in response to the RFP that was sent out. And we sort of eliminated 2 by the process of an elimination. We looked unfavorably at Golf Consulting Group, in large part because the fees and expenses totaled $40,000, which was quite a bit beyond what we had originally discussed at a prior Park Board meeting. We also passed on Sirius. We discussed that they had more of a track record of preparing appraisals for acquisitions and also for lenders and finance situations. We also discussed that Sirius was somewhat weak in doing municipal evaluations. There was a discussion had about golf convergence, and although Jim Keegan, who is the principal of Golf Convergence, is well known and very well regarded in the industry, we didn't feel like it was a good fit for what the city needs at this time. And so we narrowed it down to two proposals, and those two proposals were NGF and THK. And then after some discussion, we decided unanimously that NGF had the depth of experience, they had an excellent reputation in the industry, they had a well-written proposal, and at fees of $16,500 plus expenses not to exceed $3,500, they were good value for what the RFP was asking to be covered. NGF also committed that it could prepare a report within 6 weeks of making their site visit. So their report would be done timely. And I believe that John contacted them, and they agreed to substitute one of their teleconferences for a personal visit. So out of our meeting, we decided that NGF would be the recommended consulting company out of the subcommittee.
Well, thank you for your work and for volunteering your time. Are there any questions for Louise?
Will we be getting, what's going to be the process now after they're hired? John, could you speak to that?
Yep. If the Park Board makes this recommendation tonight, your recommendation will immediately go on the council agenda next week. I'd like to write up a report recommendation to award the contract as proposed, and the council approves it, then we move forward. I did talk to them. They are willing to substitute that teleconference with an in-person visit, and they would be willing to begin the process on June 13th, that Monday, if it were approved by council next week. Be a 6-week process. It'd be done, and they'd share all their findings with the Park Board and council at that time.
Just in time for the inspection tour, right?
Yeah. And I want to thank the committee of the Park Board. They did excellent work. They did their homework, had great discussion. I think they've come up with a wonderful recommendation. They're a well-known firm, and I know Todd Anderson spoke highly of them and supports that move.
John, do we know who will actually be doing the work? You know, often with these consulting groups, they have a lot of different bodies, but are we getting their A-team in here, and who is coming here, and those types of things?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, we do. It's listed in there, and Richard, Mr. Singer is one of the key player in that, and his assistant, and his name escapes me for now, but somehow Todd is familiar with them, has done business with them in the past, and speaks very highly of them.
So who will be on site?
Mr. Singer and his assistant.
Oh, both of them, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Key, are you ready for a motion?
I believe so.
Okay. I move that the Park Board recommend to the City Council to accept NGF's April 29th, 2011 consulting proposal to study Edina's golf course enterprises consisting of Braemar, Fred Richards, and the Golf Dome.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Is there a second?
Yes.
You did? Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Can we include in the motion the fee amount?
We deal with that? Yep.
It's in the proposal.
Yeah. So, no, let's just put that in the motion. So, you know, there's always going to be public questions about that. If we could insert that, that'd be fabulous.
Do you want to amend the motion then?
No, how about a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment? Okay.
Well, the professional fee is $16,500 with travel costs not to exceed $3,500 for the entire 6-week study.
Do you second the friendly amendment?
Second.
On the amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you for your help with that.
John, I just want to say great job by you and Todd for helping to coordinate this. And I think part of the reason we got such good proposals back was the RFP that you put out. And I think this is going to be great for the course. Obviously, the game of golf isn't doing great right now, but hopefully it'll help us move forward. So thanks for your effort on that.
Thank you. Great team effort. Appreciate your help with it. Well done.
All right, moving right along to item D on the agenda, new business, the Edinburgh Park RFP. And I'm going to turn to John on this.
Okay. Thank you. I put in your packet a request for proposal, and I have to give all the credit on this to our manager of Edinburgh Park, Ann Cattry, who's with us tonight to answer any questions you might have. The key thing here, and I think she accomplished it, we kept it to the point and simple. We're really out to find who is the right consultant that we're looking for, and hopefully someone local who is familiar with Edina, familiar with the site, has done this type of work in the past. I've already got a list of 20 different consultants to call on to see if they're interested in this. But what's in front of you tonight is the language, and is there any part of this study that you feel we have missed, or any questions that you feel you would like to know about a consultant going through this next round of process of hiring one that we may have missed in the RFP?
Is a June 4th deadline realistic?
I believe it is. If we can move forward with this, it does not require council approval to submit an RFP. It doesn't have to go to council. It can go out tomorrow if the park board wishes so. But the council would have to approve, of course, the contract of the recommended consultant from the park board.
One of my big questions about Edinburgh has to do with the needs of the community and the uses. So that, and I'm reading this, I'm wondering if this is the type of thing that you would ask a consultant to comment on or conduct focus groups on or do surveys on. But I'm just wondering if our most recent survey of desires for citizens is getting to be a little bit old. And I'm just wondering if we really have the data to give them to say, this is how people use the park, this is their, these are the things that matter to them, whether or not they want the pool or not. I'm feeling as if we don't really know about that.
I think that's a great question. I think what we would be looking for there is more of a needs assessment of the community at large, and to do sample surveys, if you will. That's a different type of consultant. That's a Decision Resources, that's the Leisure Vision Institute that we hired to do our community attitude and interest survey not that long ago. I think we asked a lot of questions that I think are somewhat relevant to Edinburgh, but we didn't ask specifically about Edinburgh in that survey. So if we feel that's important as we go down the road for what was in front of us, I think that's a different RFP. It's a different set of consultants. This is more architect, consultant, facility management. What are some things that might draw more people? What are some efficiencies we might find? What are some creative ideas of other amenities we might substitute? Those kinds of questions. The needs assessment for the community, I believe, is a different approach. A good question, but different process.
And just where I'm coming from with that is we have a lot of these standalone service areas. We have this, we have a senior citizen center, we have, the school district has the community center, but I kind of want to find out if where the community wants to go with all of those things and in a more comprehensive manner, than to just look at the Edinburgh as if it was in a vacuum. And I'm not sure how this relates. I just don't want us to waste money on looking at the details of one area without finding out if there's really a need for some of the features here. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. One of the things I think we learned in our attitude and interest survey is the community came forward with a desire, a community center. Now, what we failed to find out is what does that mean to the community? What is it that we are not providing that they seem to think in their mind is a community center, which takes on different definitions and different meaning depending on what community you're in or who you are. A community center in New Brighton is very different than what we call our community center here in Edina. Most community centers, as far as the recreation world, has all of our enterprise facilities, with the exception of golf, of course, under one roof. They've got a pool, they've got a senior center, they've got an athletic area, they've got ice rinks. Look what Eden Prairie has. It's kind of all, that's their town's community center. Now, what does community center mean for Edina when we already have these satellite facilities of a pool, arts center, Edinburgh, arena, Centennial Lakes? They're all in their own location. What is a community center in the community's mind that we're lacking? And I don't have the answer for that. Is it a health club? Is it some kind of a facility that we're not addressing, a need? That's why I agree with what you're going. I suppose to address that, if you feel strongly, the park board might want to make a recommendation. Let's do that survey before we go down this road. That's another approach. What the council has asked us to do is to look at Edinburgh. Are there other ways and efficiencies that we haven't thought of, or something creative that's going to draw more business, or at the very least reduce some of our expenses by maybe switching out some of the things that we currently offer and offer something else. I believe that was what our charge was on here.
John, do you think a survey would need to come before the RFP, or perhaps could we do a survey with the findings of the RFP?
Well, I think that's a great question too. I think you could approach it either way. I think you could do this RFP first, bring it to the council, and say, do we want to be sure this is what the community wants? And then ask, are we meeting the need that we feel we are going to identify and meet here? That's another approach to it. The key thing is we know Edinburgh from the start doesn't meet its expenses. And not a surprise, and it's not a criticism. It's just the nature of buildings like that are designed like that. None of them make money. We researched this over a decade. Ed and I went to just about every community center in the Twin City area and gave a very lengthy presentation. And the best one we found was about $250,000 a year subsidy, and then it goes up from there. So Edinburgh's not unique in that way. What is a little unique about Edinburgh is its tall ceilings, a lot of its glass, and its tremendous indoor landscape, which is really part of its signature, and that's unfortunately part of its expense, is to keep it heated and humidified and all the things to grow such beautiful plants inside. I'm rambling a little bit, but I think the answer to your question, you could do either one if you felt that way and move that on to the council.
But if a consultant responded to the RFP that has been written and came up with a new concept plan that involves certain modifications or changes in use, that work might be all undone or contradicted by a user study or a wish list community survey. I don't really completely understand how that would work.
Well, I think what it does for you is I still think there's an underlying unanswered issue out there. as a follow-up to our needs assessment survey we did not that many years ago. What is a community center? What are the needs that we currently have not met? I don't think we've done that in that particular specific area when they say community center. And it is appropriate, being that we're still studying the old public works site. There's some who've made the recommendation that should become our community center. Well, what should that look like? Does that tie into what we're doing at Edinburgh? Is Edinburgh our community center, and therefore we shouldn't build anything for a public use at the old public works site? Those kinds of questions. And maybe the council doesn't need that item. But
Well, what's your expected budget for this RFP? Or
Well,
general range?
that's a great question. I would hope we could do it for what we're, the same we're doing for the golf course, about 20.
One of the things that I'd be interested in from the consultant is what's our market? Is it 60%, 70% Edina families? How do we expand that to 10 or 15 miles away from there? We took our grandkids there Good Friday morning, which wasn't great planning on our part. I would bet there were 200 to 250 screaming happy kids using the facilities, and our son and daughter-in-law and Nana and me, Gramps, sat there watching the kids. Could not believe a 3- and 5-year-old had this much energy. But they went up and down the grotto 6, 7, 8 times, and then went and played in the Great Hall. And listening to the other grandparents talk around me, and one of them said, "We've taken the kids to the New Brighton facility, but this one is so much better. It's a long drive, but the kids prefer it here." So I think understanding what our market is and understanding how to reach out from Edina, seems there's a lot of interest in it, particularly grandparents showing grandchildren a good time. It may actually be a metro resource which isn't well known yet.
Well, I know with the consultant on board, I'm sure we'll be sharing all the survey data that I know Ann's been collecting for years. I think we've got surprisingly a pretty good handle on who our market is, where they're coming from, how many are residents, what percentage are non-residents, roughly where they're coming from. We know pretty good what that is. I think what a consultant can bring to the table is how might we better market it, and what other things might be more appealing to the market we currently serve. Or is there another market we're currently not serving that might draw more? And we have to be a little cautious because we have somewhat limited parking as well. But to find some efficiencies to make our come closer to a lesser subsidy is part of the charge here. Regardless of need, resident need, I think the first and foremost charge is how do we find those efficiencies? What are some ideas, especially with an aging facility? I mean, Edinburgh is over 20 years old. We're at that point where we ought to rethink some of the spaces we have out there. We have an outdoor space that's virtually undeveloped. We have a pool that is utilized. It's very expensive to operate, and looking at some other creative ideas to where to capture additional revenues at a lesser expense. I think that's our charge here, more so than the council didn't tell us, find a way to meet an unmet need. It's find a way to help the bottom line. Because the trust fund is going to run out in less than 5 years probably, the way we're headed. And we need to find a way to get this fixed.
Could you explain that when you say the trust fund is going to run out? Could you explain what that means?
Okay, and I get scolded by the finance department when I use that term, but it's one we've been using for many years. When Edinburgh and Centennial were built, they were built through a tax increment finance district. And through that, there was like a $9 million fund that was set aside, and part of the philosophy, part of the strategy back then, is that the way to pay eternally the maintenance of the facility of operations of both Edinburgh and Centennial Lakes would be to live off the interest of this, what I call trust fund, and plus the dollars that the residents and the businesses would pay on a monthly basis to have the privilege to live there, would, plus whatever fees and charges on top of that, would then cover the operating expenses. Well, as time went on and these larger items become expensive to replace, the physical plant part, the dollars that we draw from to make up that subsidy is that trust fund. Therefore, we may, plus the interest rates dropped out of sight, so we're earning less interest and therefore consuming more and more of the principal, to where that $9 million is now down to, is it about $3 million now. And at about $400,000 to $500,000 a year, you do the math, you can see we're a train running out of track.
So is it, I'm thinking about a consultant when we ask, we have a real short-term need here to figure this out. That's kind of what I'm hearing, because otherwise the city's going to be paying $400,000 to $500,000 a year that it's currently not paying. Because are we, when you say the $400,000, $500,000, is that coming from the trust fund?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be added to our city budget if we do nothing?
That's correct.
Okay. So in the RFP, is it possible to hire a consultant that would also give us some financial advice as to what taxing mechanisms and or is it possible to, the properties around the edges, I don't think are, they're being charged the fees, but are they going to ever, can they be assessed? I'm just thinking about different options, and
That's, again, another set of consultants that we would rely on when it comes to any additional or new or special taxation opportunities. One of the thoughts was maybe we ought to have a franchise fee for utilities, and that would cover it. Use that to maybe pay for our capital improvement plan, which would then free up dollars to cover the shortfall in the subsidy for Edinburgh. In the not too distant future, I want to say in another 10, 15, and 20 years, some of those maintenance fees of the people that reside there, it goes away. I don't know why it was written that way, but it's a fixed fee of $15 a month per household. And by written agreement, when they built the thing over 20 years ago, that's the way it was written, that it goes away. So it will be even another $300,000 worse off or more for loss of that revenue. So that's another problem to deal with in another 10 to 15 years. And they don't all go off the books at the same time. The clock starts ticking once the property was developed. Now, that's not the case, I don't believe, for the businesses, but it is for the residents, if I'm not mistaken. That's a separate subject. What we're faced with here is the immediate, because that, what I call trust fund, is going to run dry 5 or 6 years.
I have a question from our work session with the City Council. One of the issues that was brought up was how Centennial Lakes and Edinburgh Park are kind of combined financially. Has staff been working on that, and will that affect the RFP and what they're able to assess?
Yeah, we have data to show how the funding is separated already. It's a matter of the council was requesting the finance department from this day forward, from now on, show in budget reports a much more separated budget, which can be done and is currently done anyway, arguably. So that's not a difficult task. What they want us to focus on more is Edinburgh. That's really the challenging one because of its energy costs and operating expenses, not so much staff, but it's the heat, light, power, and the infrastructure.
it seems like the emphasis and why we're being asked to do this is because of the structural uniqueness of the facility. And although I definitely do not want to go this route, I would suggest if we could get an assessment of the market value of the facility so that we're really covering all of our bases and seeing all of our options to make a good comparison and, you know, feel firm about our decision.
We could certainly ask the assessing department to give us a value.
Well, I think this is a really well-written document in terms of the needs that we have right now. So I guess I'd move approval of the RFP, and we recommend that the city council directs you to send out the RFP.
Second.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to old business. Item A is the park board bylaws. John, do you want to?
Yes, I was, since this was put together, I've spoke with our city manager, and he asked that we put this item on hold for now, to table the matter, because there is a desire to keep a consistency now with the bylaws, as the park board discussed. Even at your last meeting, there was a concern about, there's no two the same amongst boards and commissions, and there's a strong desire to make them all the same. So until the council zeroes in on that, and apparently they didn't make a lot of progress on that issue at the work session, there is still a desire to move in that direction. So city manager asked if we would hold off on this until the next meeting. Okay.
All right, thank you. So then item B is the committee assignments. Talking about the two committees, the facility user fee and other related fees committee and the donation policy and naming of parks and facilities policy committee. Long titles.
Just quickly, the reason why I've asked this to be on the agenda is to make everyone aware. I currently have one member on each. I haven't actively solicited other volunteers to make up more than a one-person committee. One of the questions I would have for the park board is, how many do you feel should a committee be minimum members? Does two make up a committee, or three? How do you feel about that?
I think two is fine, as long as the item is available to be discussed at a board meeting, and enough information is circulated among the full board so that they have all the facts in front of them.
I guess my question with two would be how, if there was a disagreement, how would you come to a consensus, or would you present that?
Well, perhaps you would just say that there was a disagreement and see if the board could come to a consensus as a whole.
Not to interrupt here, but go ahead, Ed.
We've been asked to go to the basement. There's a strong rotation that was seen in Hopkins, so nearing the Edina area, so we'll need to stop the meeting, go downstairs.
Okay.
Anna's going to watch the program for you.
Okay. Did she tell you to tell me that?
All right, so we're reconvening after an act of Mother Nature. All right, so I believe we are on agenda item under old business B, committee assignments. Am I correct?
And I think where we left off, since the tornado warning, was the makeup of committees is in general, and whether you would prefer in this case that I just bring these matters to the board as a whole to deal with and do some research ahead of time, send it out, and have your discussion at a park board meeting and not necessarily go through the committee process. That's really your call. Happy to do whatever you'd like.
My thought is maybe what we do is we, have the committees formed and they sort of gather up the information, and then we schedule a workshop. Maybe it's prior to a meeting, maybe it's in a place of a meeting in a few months, and so we can sort of maybe touch on those two issues, and maybe there's other things, maybe there's some other policy issues that come up like we keep touching on that we also could discuss at that workshop. So that would just be my thought. But I think having committees do some of the background work and some of the initial research and maybe come back with some tentative proposals would be a good way to proceed.
Yeah, and my perspective is as far as the number of park board members on a committee, we've just seen that the Veterans Committee doesn't even have a member of the park board on it. So, and that is a functioning committee, but not, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with not having any park board member as a member of that committee. But I would say that a minimum would be of one, and that one would be the chair of the committee would be my recommendation, is to say that a minimum of one park board member plus whomever other members at large from the community, or we could we would have the flexibility on certain committees to see if there's certain groups of people that might have an expertise that we would like to include and make sure that they're part of the committee. So I would recommend that we look at, for example, and I'll just go to the naming committee. And by the way, I know that Joseph Hulbert is also interested in being on that committee. But for that committee, I've talked to a number of people, and it's interesting how this resonates with residents, that while they know we have a naming policy, but there are a lot of people who actually do want to get involved in the public process, and I would like to encourage that as much as possible. I know that other advisory boards operate like this, and so I'm thinking this may be something that the park board could also do, which is open up the committees to other people. We're currently doing it with the veterans. And so, for example, for naming, I was trying to come up with groups that I would like to have I would like to hear their thoughts. The Heritage Preservation Board, for example, would have one person on the committee. The Historical Society might be another organization to be on the naming committee. The Rotary might be another organization that would be on the committee. League of Women's Voters was very active in creating the study that I'm going to forget the name of. Does anybody know?
The private access and use of public facilities.
Thank you. I know that they were very careful about how public places were being used, and I think that they would be also very good at informing policy for naming. And then I would also ask the person who brought it forward to us to discuss, Gene Persia, I would ask him to be a part because he was involved in getting the ball rolling. Plus at-large members, and I would suggest that we put a press release out and name a date and ask for letters of interest, and Joseph and I and and you, if you would like, John, could discuss how many places we have on that committee. And I haven't worked out all the details because I feel like I'm inventing a wheel here. But I think that would be a way to structure a committee such as this. It may not work for all the other committees that we want to form, but it would be one of my suggestions. I'd be looking for demographic diversity. I would be looking for quadrant diversity for the at-large members and gender balance, all of these things as far as how we would be choosing to select a committee. But that would be a process that I think would be engaging for people, and it would allow, if somebody read that, they'd say, oh, maybe I do want to be a part, just as the veterans stepped forward after they saw the announcement in the paper. So that's an idea.
I think my first knee-jerk reaction to that would be, for the Veterans Committee, we were really looking at a 2-year commitment of a very volunteer, intense work to fundraise, serve on subcommittees within that committee, to do marketing, to do research, to do fundraising. There's a lot of hours of work we're asking of the volunteers, and that's why it was so formalized and is going to have at least a 2-year lifespan. For these that are really probably at the end of the day are going to be 5 to 6 pages of new policy, is it really worth going through the exercise of calling on 11, 12 people to work on that? I guess, and that's fine. If you think the answer is yes, then we'll be happy to do that. This is very different from the Veterans Committee.
Yeah, I agree. This is not a 2-year process. I know that. And I also would suggest that I don't think it will take that many meetings to put together this either. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you on those things. But I do think that opening up committees to the public is something that we ought to be very active and aware that that their voice can often add a whole other dimension to the discussion. And so I would recommend that when we look at the number of people on a committee, we look at minimum of 1 park board member, and then open it up to a public. I mean, when we write, this is a part of a policy, though, that we'll need to write up, but and whether or not the policy for the naming committee is something that is a template for the facility user fee committee, it doesn't, I don't know if that's the same animal, but.
I like your idea, Ellen, about having the flexibility to include non-park board members in committees. But I'd like to maintain some flexibility to have committees with only park board members just for expediency. Because to get bogged down in advertising, I mean, I think the committee tasks will dictate whether or not it's a committee that's, that should lean towards more public input. I don't want to get bogged down. I want, like, for example, the golf club committee to study the RFP. That was a very quick analysis, review, discussion, and I think we acted very prudently, and I mean we didn't get bogged down, and I thought that was great.
just in the interest of time, I could be wrong, but it looks like before us we have the 2 committee assignments, and possibly just thinking in terms of those 2 committees, because we do have our bylaws separately. So if we're looking at establishing what a committee is, possibly doing that then, but where do we want to go tonight with these 2 committees, or do we want to hold off?
My suggestion, since only, I think you said, John, 1 member signed up for each one, work with that member and the staff can put together some recommendations and bring it up at the next or second to the next meeting.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that from other people in the community, they would like to be involved in the naming committee. So I'm not sure why we would limit that.
I have a strong personal point of view that all we have is a recommendation. The city council has all the authority. And if the city council wanted help in naming, they'd probably ask for it. But it seems like it's an awful lot of work for the staff. It's some work for citizens, and the city council may go a very different direction.
Yeah, I think, Eleanor, I think what you're talking about is more data collection, more, okay, I'm on this committee, I should go talk to these groups and figure out what their opinion is and come back with some sort of then recommendation of the park board to then develop a policy from that point. But for each of these, I think they're just kind of a specific task, and you figure out, who the stakeholders are in that, and come back to the park board, with the assistance of staff kind of working through the process, and go from there onto the city council. But, and then in terms of the structure of it, I agree that with Kia, that seems to be more of a bylaws matter than these specific committee assignments.
I see this as ad hoc committees, and if we can get the Heritage Preservation Board and there's interest, and some of these other groups and there's interest, I don't know why we wouldn't engage them to gather their feedback, particularly with naming rights, because they do tend to create an emotional response when they're done correctly and when they're done incorrectly. And so I don't have a problem with that. I just think, set up an ad hoc committee, set a timeline that you're going to get it done in 3 months, and invite these groups, and if they want to participate or if they have feedback, get them involved. I don't have a problem with that. I agree, we don't want the public necessarily writing park board policy. At the same time, establishing a framework and understanding what options are out there or what other people may be able to add to the discussion is worth that level of involvement. So I think it would be a mistake not to invite others to participate, at least in that discussion, or at least in the opportunity to provide input. And I don't know what that necessarily means.
I agree that we need to honor people's willingness to serve, not only our own members, but the public. And I guess I would like to see the people who are interested in serving on these committee assignments from the park board. I would like to see a park board member chair that committee. And perhaps whoever is interested in these committees could come forth to the park board with a proposal of who they would like on that committee, how many members they were thinking of, and then we can go from there to have a better idea of what the people who want to serve on the committee, what direction they'd like to go.
Nominate Ellen to chair the naming committee.
Second.
If that's appropriate.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. All right, and
So Kia, should I go ahead and suggest who I would have on my committee, and so we can get this moving, or should we wait till to the next meeting?
I would suggest, I don't know the feeling of the other members, but perhaps in the interest of time, waiting until next meeting and coming up, giving John maybe a written proposal, and perhaps we can do that in coordination with the other committee. I know Bill is interested. I am also interested in that committee, and perhaps I could have a conversation with him to see who would like to take on that leadership, unless other members would like to do that. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
Yep.
Okay. Well, if there's no other discussion on that, why don't we move on to public comment? It looks like the turn. Oh, I'm sorry.
Before you move on that, the facility user fee and related fees committee, the only park board member volunteering for that is Bill Lowe.
Well, I said I'd have a discussion with him.
With Bill and ask him.
And see, kind of determine. We'll definitely work with you to.
Okay. I didn't hear a motion to make him chair of that.
No, no, we wouldn't do that.
Okay. Well, I thought, he's not here, so. Just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding.
All right, so seeing no members of the public here tonight, we will move on to updates from staff.
The only updates I have for you now are you will be seeing a little different format and agenda coming your way that we're going to standardize so that we're consistent. As you were just pick up a city council agenda, that's what it's going to look like. You're going to have an approval of the agenda at the top, so you could add, take away, whatever. There would be an approval of the agenda. We're going to have a consent agenda item on there, which will probably be just the minutes in our case, probably 99 times out of 100. And then you'll have reports and recommendations, each of which will have their own reported page, much like we do staff reports for the city council. And we're working towards standardization of how, of course, I already told you that on the bylaws. So it'll be standardization of the staff report, the agenda, and the bylaws that we're moving toward. As far as other staff updates, anybody that has access to the weather guide, please have them turn it around so our golf course can have some business. We're struggling weather-wise out there. But Edinburgh has done extremely well this spring, so that's the flip side. And our dome has done slightly better because of the weather. But no, things are in full swing. Looking forward to a wonderful summer. A very busy time for us. A lot of staff come on board during our seasonal time. Again, welcome our new member. Great to have all these volunteers willing to serve on the park board. It's a great experience. And that's all I had for now.
John, a question. Doesn't the city council have public comments at the beginning of their agenda? I think that's where ours should be too.
It will be exactly like city council then. Yep. Okay.
Final question, when does the farmers market open?
Oh, it's earlier than last year, and it's in June, and the date escapes me. But it will be slightly earlier than the last year.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, John. Park board comments.
Okay, last meeting I was nominated to be on the committee that's looking into the public works site, and they had 2 meetings since then. And I just wanted to let you know that, and to let anybody who's watching know that these meetings are open to everyone, and they're welcoming input from the community. They're happening every third Thursday, and they're meeting tomorrow to just kind of figure out the time and place for this next meeting. So I think you'll have to watch City Extra to get an update on exactly when that will be. The next they're all open meetings. The next meeting will be this coming Thursday at 7 o'clock. And just look at the city website to get information. Just to give you an update, they're at the point now where they were able to get money from a grant to hire consultants, and so now they're into the process of, we just talked through this. What kind of consultants are they going to hire, and for what? So there's a needs assessment going on, and there's a talk about finance and transportation and everything. They're really hoping that the community can get involved as much as possible to create a vision for the public works site in that small area plan.
Ellen, are they maintaining this, it was like small area plan committee or something? What is the name of the committee now? Is it still that same?
I think we're calling it CAT. I don't know, CAT, and I can't even tell you. Do you know, Carrie? Or, sorry?
Is it a community assessment team?
I believe that's what it is. That was what it used to be, but this is like phase 2. So we don't really have a good name for it. It's I have the timeline. I was looking at this, the community-based planning process for the small area plan. So, okay, so what are we calling ourselves? I don't know. Sorry. It is a long acronym, and speaking of when they want it all done, it's a year process, and you don't need to say you're going to go to all meetings either. Just show up and you'll hear what's going on. There's also a few kind of focus groups going on to just gain input, and so those are something people could be involved in as well.
I'm sorry, I forgot one last thing I wanted to hear. Until further notice, until the council changes practice, we're going to continue to videotape all of the park board meetings. So they will continue to be available through web streaming and will be shown on TV. And until they change that policy, we can expect that these will continue to be videotaped. So work sessions will not be permitted off camera. Your committee meetings that you may have to be publicized to meet open meeting laws, but will continue to be videotaped until further notice.
Well, thank you, Ellen and Jen. Are there additional comments? I do have an afterthought after our break downstairs about an item removed from our agenda, the bylaws. Since the city manager wants to make them more consistent and is kind of looking at a whole, if we have changes or suggestions, should we give those to you, or what would be the process?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, if you have anything that mine is just a first draft shot at it, trying to take what I thought was the best of the board and commission ones and yet keep it simple. If you do have some suggestions for changes or addition, please send them to me. And then I will then copy all park board on what that suggestion is, because we'll be having that discussion later for sure.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Right. Meeting adjourned.